Record. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Illuminate session, where we're being joined by special guest Sara Kuz. As a student of life, Sara is someone who consciously witnesses the flow and patterns and explores the mechanics of what is happening. Life holds up a mirror to our faces, and similar to how it might be difficult to decipher a dream, it may be difficult to recognize the things life is reflecting back to us. Using the language of human design as a structure to jump off of and the flavor of compassion, Sara helps her clients decipher and understand what life is asking in order for them to find clarity and their own unique way through their challenges. So, welcome, Sara, and thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Now, I understand that you had an aha about the role of women in relationships and how that reflects in our experiences of God, Goddess, the universe, being, source, whatever you want to call it. So, can you share with me kind of what the aha was and how you got there?
Um, I actually don't know if I can. That's so fascinating because I was reflecting on the idea that I felt yesterday, and I was like, okay, so we're looking at well, let's just jump in the deep end. We're looking at God in a certain way where they have this role, or however we look at them, they have this role, they're in control. We are not in control of our experience. And the way I remember this flavor at least, but the male and female role was available when I shared it with you prior. But it's like in considering the power that perhaps we give this being, we remove ourselves from our own agency or our own sovereignty,
Mm.
and we don't feel like we're in power necessarily. And I guess the so we had a session yesterday, and one of the things that came up was the black and whiteness of life
Mm. Yeah.
and how we see things in black and white. Like this is how it works. I expect life to work this way. And then when it doesn't, we get stuck in the fact that it should work that way, as opposed to how it's actually working. And in a grander scheme, like in especially in the introduction that you just read, like our belief system keeps us in place.
Yes. It creates a positionality from which we look at all of life and we go, this is how it
Oh,
is.
that's what that topic was. I was like, I don't know what a positionality is, but yes, yeah, it exactly does. And it's really interesting to receive a reflection of my own belief, whatever it is that's happening, and see how to sit in that belief and to see how it impacts me, whether I stay in it or whether I wait for a new understanding or a new belief to take its place, because I do see the limiting potential of how we believe. I'm
Yeah.
actually really curious of your experience of that, because I know you do a lot of work with Compassion Key, and that kind of takes the same, it requires a similar stance from how I use it. So I'm curious how you see that.
About the shattering of reality, or
Yeah, like the actually I want to ask this. How did you come to realize that beliefs are what keep us fixed?
it's through a lot of breaking down of the beliefs that were keeping me fixed, and through a lot of fighting and really holding on to the idea of this is the way it's supposed to be. And the beauty in that is when you go through an experience that shatters or challenges all of those beliefs, you start kind of grasping for straws, or at least that's what I did. I was like grasping for straws, grasping for things to help me make sense of these things that I could no longer make sense of, trying to understand the mechanics of the universe or the mechanics of how reality is created or how our beliefs shape reality, and not wanting to take ownership, wanting to pass blame on to God. To go, what the hell, God? Instead of going, okay, how am I creating this? How am I contributing to what this experience is for me right now. And it was only when I started to take accountability and it's like, oh, that belief, I see how that belief actually created this. But then that belief actually came from this part of my experience back here. And was
Hmm.
that true back then versus, and like, where did that belief come from? Whether it was like, your parents will tell you this thing or whatever, and you kind of go, okay, and you take that on as being a truth. But then it's like, well, was that even the truth? And where did they get that information? And so then you just start to kind of unravel everything and start to look at everything and go, okay, what of this is actual truth? And how much of it is just beliefs that aren't actually based on a reality?
It sounds like, so again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this was a longer journey. How do I want to put this? I'm hearing a juxtaposition between your experience and my experience, where for me, it was like it came to this boiling point. Like I had this massive boiling point in my life where everything just broke. It was like I tried to live in this past experience for so long, and I was pushing and I was pushing and I was pushing, and the ability to break through the brick wall just ended. And it was like I kept hitting brick wall, or the brick wall was getting bigger, or the brick wall was getting thicker, and I was doing this against it, like, why aren't you breaking? And then
Yep.
everything broke. So I'll ask this differently. I'm curious because I'm hearing the difference. I'm not sure if it's there. Would you say your experience is similar, or would you say it was a process over time?
Yes to both.
Mm.
Right? Like I did not recognize that I was walking up against a brick wall, right? I
Mm.
thought, oh, I'm
Mhm.
above the brick wall. Look at me. I see ahead. I see. Meanwhile, I'm literally looking at a brick wall and acting as though it doesn't exist, right? And so
Mhm.
when I smashed up against it, it's kind of like a person running into a patio door and they didn't realize it existed. I just kind of, you know what I mean? I thought I
Yeah.
was seeing clearly, and I wasn't. There was so many belief systems or so many distortions that were still at play, but I'd found a sense of peace enough within myself that I couldn't see any of these distortions as actually being a problem at that point in time. They made the window look really clean. So that way, when I smashed into it, I didn't realize I was going to smash into it.
Oh, interesting. I totally just got a different picture because when you were describing the patio door, I'm like, oh, you're seeing clearly to walk through something, but it's solid. And when you were talking about the distortions, I'm like, oh, you were seeing a painted reality where a door didn't exist.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, which
That's
actually made
wild.
me start walking a little bit more carefully, really
Mm.
paying attention to a lot more of the nuances and every little belief system that came up, every little emotion that came up, every little thought, idea, whatever, to go, okay, is this the truth?
Mhm. Yeah, wow. I have never seen a brick wall in that way. That's literally the illusion. The illusion, the path is there. Oh my God. Wow. Hmm. I I'm actually really interested in what you just said and where it took me. It took me to a place where like when you asked what is the truth, it took me to a place where um the truth may be here for this moment. So, like, whatever is true for me right now, having explored these things, this is what's here for me right now. But it may not have been there before, and it may not be there after. Um, so I'm curious, have you experienced something like that, or is there any reflection you'd like to give to the idea that the truth is for the here and now, but maybe not for before or after?
So, I mean, at this point in time, what I see as the truth is I am a limitless divine being who is co-creating my reality. That is constantly true. Now, if I have different parts of myself that are showing up that are going, we're not so limitless right now. This isn't, do you see what this bill is? Or do you see this work that needs to get done? Or this relationship has a problem or whatever. We're not limitless. We're not divine. We're separated. We're not one. God's not on our side, whatever. That's all the lie. Right. And so those distortions, when they show up, it's like, okay, let me get back to the truth here. Let me listen to every part of me that isn't believing in this truth right now, hear what they have to say, and bring them back into the truth. So,
Oh, that's so interesting. I love the pictures that come up in my mind when you speak. It's like I can see this tapestry that I had, again, a belief or an idea of how it was working. And then the way that you say things gives a different organization. Like I'm able to let it move around and see something different. So the way I was thinking before you answered that was I have this experience I'm having right now, which I wasn't able to have before because of whatever was limiting me. But this experience is for right now. It's not necessarily for later. So if I want to have this experience more than in this moment right now, and I hang on to it for later, that's going to create a distortion in my future experience. And the way that you described it made it seem more like, hmm, how can I fit this into words? So earlier this week, I saw like all the bits of me as like we're all on this bus together and we're all traveling in kind of the same direction and some are more present than others. Like some are more in the back and they're here for this part of the field trip and some show up for the other part of the field trip. But the way you described it was like this, like constant fluid movement of these pieces that are showing up, and it was just the fluidity was more than how I had pictured it. It was the way I pictured it was more stagnant, but it was so beautiful how these pieces were coming in together. um I'm curious how, now that I've said that out loud, how do you experience all these pieces of you? What's your kind of group travel experience like?
so I essentially say, and I'll often go like this part of me and this part of me. So it's almost like these little puppet selves that show up. And I just had an experience a few weeks ago where it was like, I have the overhead me who's kind of watching all of these parts play out. And the parts are, they're acting out their sadness, their anger, their disappointment, their frustration, whatever it might be. But I give them the overhead, gives them all space of, okay, let me just witness all of you. Let me hear what you have to say and let me feel whatever is coming up because of you guys talking right now. And then almost like a teacher in a classroom of going,
Mm,
okay, I hear all of your points of view. This is what I believe. And I understand why you feel like that. I get that. We're not negating the sadness, we're not negating the anger, but really, let's look at this. And I feel like because I've been doing a lot of healing work over the past 2.5 years, like a lot, I feel like I don't need to stop my everyday kind of stuff in order to sit down and have a process and pull the part out and get it to finally talk to me or whatever. That they're all kind of willing now. They're like, okay, we trust this person enough now. We can show up whenever. We can say whatever. It's always going to be okay. And I, the overhead, can essentially lead all of these parts back to whatever the truth is that they actually needed to remember, you know? Because what I've learned, and I apologize because this is supposed to be an interview of you, and I
no,
feel
no,
like
I'm the one asking the questions.
I
Don't
know
apologize. I have questions coming up, so that's where I'm going.
that's okay. Um, so Essentially, what I've recognized in doing as much of the healing work as what I've done is throughout all of my experiences within life, and for really all of our experiences, we have the experience and we're looking at it through a specific lens. And that lens is lending us the beliefs and the feelings and the emotions and everything that basically keep us separated from what our truth is. Right. And so we'll go through an experience and we'll go, ugh, I'm so unloved now, or I'm so unworthy. I'm not safe. It's not safe for me to be in a body. It's not safe for me to speak my truth. And we carry that story with us. And then we create experiences that are the same thing over and over and over again. And unless you have someone that's kind of stopping you and going, is that actually the truth? And you don't question it, that story becomes the narrator. But if you can stop yourself, or you have someone else who will reflect back to you, like, hey, stop for a second. Is this the actual truth right now? Why don't we look at it in kind of a bigger way? Why don't we look at it through a different lens to go, what was actually happening? What was it that you needed to remember then? I had one experience where I was a version of myself at like 2 years old, and I was this little joyful love beam. I just had so much joy, so much love. I just wanted to like emanate it to the world. And I was stuck behind a corner at a house that we lived in when I was a child. And I was kind of peeking around the corner at my parents, and my mom was busy cooking, and my dad was getting something out of the fridge. And I was looking to see, is it okay for me to be joyful and loving right now? And dad was in a bad mood and mom was stressed out. So it was like, oh, I can't be joyful and loving right now because they're not joyful and loving. And so it's like, was that the truth? No. You had every right to be a joyful, loving little love beam. Like, just do what you want to do. But little me, because I was so sensitive to how other people reacted to me and everything, I took it as it's not safe for me to be as I truly am. So I think it's so important for each of us to really pay attention to these parts and not to go, yes, these parts are right and this is true of my experience, but to go, how did I take it and what was a different way I could look at it? I actually was talking to a woman earlier this week, and she was sharing with me about an experience that she had where she was getting very frustrated with someone that was driving on the road. And her husband was in the vehicle with her, and she's getting angry and whatnot. And he had said to her when they got to their destination, I hope you have a better day than how this morning started out for you. And she was like, my day will be fine or whatever. I have a right to be angry, and I can be as angry as I want right now because of this stupid driver and whatever. And he said to her, or you could let it go. And then she was like, you can't control me. Why are you trying to take my control from me? And it's like, well, that's not actually what was happening.
Yes.
Yes, your anger has a right, but do you really want your anger to be the one that's in control right now? We
Mhm.
fight to go, you can't control me, but if anger is controlling you, you're still just being controlled.
That's right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, like that reactionary experience to the circumstance as opposed to, is this actually how I'm meant to respond in this moment?
yeah,
Because there is an expression, and it could be being angry, it could be doing nothing, it could be like, haha, look at this idiot beside me, or whatever.
yeah,
There's more than one way to respond. So, um, and that's what I find so interesting, like the patterns that show up for people and how in being able to witness them over time, it's become a lot easier to see that bigger story. So, like where it might come from, why it's there, and then how it usually plays out. It doesn't mean it's going to play out that way, but how it usually plays out. And that's just this everyday experience that we've become accustomed to living. And yeah, like, does it have to be that way? Is it useful? Is it beneficial to you to be angry? Is it your best expression or your highest expression to be angry? And I've talked about this before. I've had it where my highest expression is to be angry. There
yeah,
is no other experience I can have in that moment, and I embrace those.
yeah,
But what's really interesting about when they happen in my highest expression as the anger is only present until I need to stop using it.
yes,
And then it goes away. And then I can literally be a different human being the next second until the anger needs to step back in and be like, this is what needs to happen in this moment. And it's such a strange experience because normally, like in being angry, I'm used to being angry and red and enraged
Yeah.
and just stomp around and smash things. But that also isn't the highest expression of anger.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's so interesting because when you finally get to a space of just being able to witness your own anger, to express your own anger, where it doesn't have to be this big kind of monster that's coming out to thrash out at everybody, where you can just go, yeah, I'm angry. I've got a boundary here. You've overstepped a line here, or this was triggered in me, and I'm protecting myself. You can actually stay in that sovereignty while you're angry, right? You can
Mhm,
express the anger without actually destroying anybody.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, it's a wild experience to see how it's not always destructive.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
100%. Because I was a person that, and I think we've talked about our anger in the past. Like I was a very, well, actually, we've talked about annihilation as well. That was my anger. You know, it's someone is going to be annihilated because I'm so furious right now. I'm either
Hmm.
self-destructing or destructing everybody else, you
Hmm.
know, and it really was when I learned how to actually be with my anger because I was so uncomfortable with it. You know, being angry was such a scary emotion, and expressing my anger was also terrifying to me. So I'd keep it at bay as long as I could until I was more like a volcano that's erupting and just taking
Hmm.
everyone out.
Yeah, yeah, I was the same, and I can think of this one specific experience in the past. That was actually a really big moment in a number of lives at that time, and I I didn't realize. So in being somebody who did suppress my anger, I didn't realize how it then carried its flavor into every interaction.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I was angry, but people were receiving me as angry. And I was so confused because I'm like, I have no idea why you're reacting the way you're reacting. Like I'm trying to communicate this thing, but the anger wasn't coming out. I was keeping it inside and I didn't know how to express it in a healthy way. So no matter what my message was, it was anger to the other person.
Yeah.
And realizing, like, I remember this was, I think it was last year or the year before. I remember reading something I wrote and reading it for the first time and seeing in my words how angry I was. Like, I thought I was writing a loving thing. And I was so angry. I was like, oh, no wonder it blew shit up. Like, there's nothing else there. Like, I think I'm writing something that's loving and has this wonderful message, but everything is so convoluted because of this thread that I couldn't see.
Hmm.
And I even shared it with a few close friends before I gave this letter to this person. And they were kind of like, "Oh, Sarah, what are you about to do?" And I was like, "Why is that the feeling? Like, I don't understand." But now I do. And yes, it totally blew things up. And what's really interesting now too is because of all the things that have changed since then, I'm kind of really happy that it did
Mm.
because of um, I'm gonna say how the other person, another person who was involved in this scenario, also couldn't see the underlying thread of their own experience. I mean, I don't know if I was looking at the same thing still, but now in reflection, like I had no idea that was going to be my impact. And in knowing that it is my impact or it was my impact, I'm happy to have removed them from whatever pain that situation caused them because it wasn't going to stop. There was no stopping it. It
Yeah.
was just going to be the same pattern over and over because nobody in that scenario was aware of the pattern that was occurring. And it's such a weird thing to say because I that whole situation was painful for everybody. It's still not resolved. But um and I don't think again like I'm saying like I didn't really understand the impact that I was going to have, but I hope they can see it as a blessing in the future, but I see it as a blessing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. I
No,
can't
it
really put it all
totally
in.
makes sense. And I want to go back to what you were saying about writing and where you thought it was so loving, but there was such an undertone of the anger that was there because I feel like there's so many of us, myself included, that without recognizing the level of anger that we have or the deep rage that we can carry, especially when it's been unexpressed for so long, how it then distorts everything that we're expressing. And we go, oh no, I'm loving, I'm a good person. Like, it's the spiritual ego steps in to go, no, look at how loving I am. Look at how great I am. I've said this in the most loving way I could possibly say it. But without addressing that anger thread that's lying underneath, it is only perpetuating more of that frequency out there. So,
Yeah. It's so the way I'm starting to see this now is based on my own experience, it's related to digestion. And of course, like the third chakra, the emotional chakra, is near the digestive organs. I don't know exactly which ones it represents, but the experience of hanging on to the past emotions is so dangerous because of how it flavors everything forward.
mm,
So not knowing not knowing how to move forward, needing perhaps help from others, not knowing what the future brings, because it can, like, this kind of thing can, blow up relationships. It can change the entire fabric of our life experience if we bring these emotions to light. So I understand the fear that is inside that, but if the emotion is kept inside, it's still coming out. It
yeah,
can't help but be expressed, but it's not being expressed in a way that can be digested. It's still stuck in that painful experience where no awareness is being gained from what that experience brought.
yeah,
And that to me is where, that picture on the brick wall becomes painted because there's this belief that this is how things are.
yeah,
Yet when we step into the willingness or the fear and the willingness and the courage to digest the thing, we're saying, hey, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I'm willing to see what can come from this. I'm willing
yes.
to experience real change, regardless of what the outcome is. And and that can be really hard when there's people around you that aren't willing to necessarily change or change as fast or change in the same ways or in the same direction as you want to go. So,
And see, I feel like that's actually a limiting belief that a lot of us carry is that if no one else is willing to do this change, it's going to be that much harder for me. Right? And it's part of
yeah,
that like group mentality that we all need to change together. We all need to shift together. We all need to heal together. Otherwise, someone's getting left behind or I'm not going to be included anymore. But someone has to be the pioneer. Someone has to be willing to go, I don't care who's coming along on this journey with me. I'm healing this because I'm no longer comfortable. I'm willing to
yes,
face this because I'm not comfortable. And
yes,
it can be difficult in that you may not get the support you need from the people around you, but I guarantee you'll find support from someone.
absolutely. Absolutely. If you're willing to step onto the path of the unknown, people join you. There's people that are going to find you, you're going to find people, you're going to be talking about your experience, there's going to be resonance. And the thing is, like, if you so in my experience of this kind of change, I have made a conscious choice to not assume how the other person is going to change.
Mm,
And that allows them to change however they need to. And it's allowed me to see them change in ways that have surprised the shit out of me because I'm
yeah,
like, okay. never expected you to be capable of that, or I never expected you to actually move through that without the support of others. Where I know personally in my journey, I benefit so much from the support of others, and not everybody needs that. Like there are some people who need to do the deep diving and the exploring on their own, and perhaps in a more what may appear as a messy, incomplete way, but it's part of their own journey
Yeah.
and it's part of their own experience. And that's the thing, like in me choosing to consciously let the other person evolve in their own way, then that creates so much more space for them to do that. I don't put them in a pigeonhole. I don't, I don't create the reality of what their experience is going to be from my limited vision of what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've definitely struggled with that. It's one of my challenges that I've recognized is um, seeing, I have a tendency of seeing a lot of potential for people, right? So, and so a lot of times I would put the umbrella of their potential on them and then almost act as though I'm standing on the sidelines cheering them on as they move towards their potential. But really, I'm kind of looking at the clock going, well, when are you going to get there? How long is this going to take? And so I recognized, and it was just really in the past year, how often my own point of view of what their healing journey looked like, what their potential looked like, what looks to me like, they're just turning a page to them looks like they're finishing the entire book, right?
Mhm.
And for me to celebrate that for them, to go, yep, you finished this book. Great job. Like that's excellent. And it's okay if I see like there's 10 more books in the series yet that you
Yeah,
you get
exactly.
to read, you
Yeah.
know. But I also remember too when I first started out on my journey of consciously choosing to heal myself way back then, I was the person who was reading a page and going, I finished the book. So I can see it's a reflection of where I was at so many points as well. But then I became the kind of judge to go, well, you could be doing more. You could be doing more. Like there's more potential. And it's not or I wasn't seeing it before as being like you've got to do this, but there was still that kind of stickiness behind me that was essentially telling these people, you've got to do this. Instead of planting a seed and allowing it to grow as however it's supposed to grow, trusting that it's just going to grow and bear fruit or vegetables at one point in time, I was planting the seed. Or even acting like I'm planting the seed, but maybe it's a community garden and I had nothing to do with it. But then I'm there every single day going, this is how you grow. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yes. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then that it brings me back to the whole idea of our relationship with God, because it's essentially me saying to God, I don't think you're going to help this person. I don't think you're, trustworthy enough that you're going to let this person evolve as they need to. Look at my
Mhm.
plan for this person, and it's
Mhm.
like, humble yourself, girl.
Right? Oh man, I know. I totally get that because that's what I was doing. And it was part that, but it was also part like I could see the outcome I was desiring,
Mm,
but I didn't know that I needed to dive into the emotional experience in a different way. I didn't know how much I wasn't going inward.
yeah.
I had no idea.
Everybody
And
else's problems are a perfect distraction for us to not go inward.
I wouldn't the problems I'm thinking of, they were mutual. So I have a lot of relationships to heal in this lifetime. So it was me seeing the outcome for us and me assuming that that was what they wanted too,
Mm,
and pushing in that direction when they weren't necessarily ready.
gotcha.
And that's been a huge that's been a huge theme in my life in different ways. So like it's shown up in many different ways, but this is something that I would do. And then that's where those brick walls would show up. And it's like, why is nothing happening? Does nobody give a shit? Like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, why does nobody want to get there? And it it's really it's really interesting to consider this past experience and or these past experiences and consider how much in the physical world I was living. Like I had no, I don't want to say I had no, but I had such little awareness of the emotional world and I had such
Mhm.
little awareness of the mental world of others and I had such little awareness of the spiritual experience
Yeah.
because of the black and white beliefs and the way I looked at the world, like, again, like that idea God is this being or like the world is working in a certain way. And I still, there are some beliefs that I still carry through, but they show up so differently. Like everything happens for a reason. Like before, I was way more fatalistic. Whereas now I'm way more agency oriented, like everything's happening for a reason. What is the reason that I gave this thing to happen?
I love
Where
that.
does it come from? And that can be on also a grander spiritual scale too, because not everything is happening in this lifetime for me because of this lifetime. It's
Yes.
part of this lifetime. It's part of the bigger structure of this lifetime that I'm having this experience in. But there's other lifetimes that I've experienced that again, like whether they're true or not, I feel I've witnessed something that is showing me a reason why this is happening in this lifetime. And there's a different flavor of understanding I'm supposed to gain here as opposed to the understanding I gained there, or the lack of understanding I gained there and the understanding I get to gain here, like however it unfolds. So, I don't even know why I started telling or saying this story. Um, I have no idea. I don't even know where I was going. Can you help me out?
No, I totally love everything that you're saying right now because I too have had these past life experiences that have shown up for whatever reason in this lifetime to help me understand things that are happening in this lifetime on a different level or to give new language to it, new awareness to it. And so, with everything happening for a reason, I love your question. What is the reason or what is the meaning that I'm giving to allow this to even happen in my existence right now? Like, what has made me call this forward as part of my experience?
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know,
And then, as much as that may be a question that we get answers to or not, because sometimes there are no answers to that question. Even if something is present and confusing, like we have no idea why it's here, we have no idea what this experience is for, the I wonder, so this train of thought's coming back to me. I wonder if the idea of judgment was there. So like in judging it as right or wrong, we are unable to take what it is we need to, as opposed to sitting in the experience and going, what is it that I need to discern about myself from this experience? What is it that this experience is teaching me about myself that makes me, take pause and look inside and be like, here's this thing that I'm seeing. What's important about this thing that I'm seeing? And then whatever unfolds from that. So whether it's relationship or personal or perhaps the exact roadblock that stops that person from moving forward into the next experience, because that's very much how these things happen. Like there's this process of unfolding that's required in order to keep stepping forward on our path. And if we don't learn the lesson, we just keep getting the same lesson over and over in different forms, of course,
yeah.
but it keeps showing up. And I find that so interesting how in and I'm reflecting again upon like the things I was referring to prior in how I'm happy for the impact that I was able to give so that the pattern could be stopped for a moment and it
Yeah.
could be lived in a different way instead of being stuck in the same one and having to live that experience over and over and not feeling happiness, perhaps in a way that can come with the multitudes of experience of being able to move through in a different way and actually being able to get there. It felt like there was futility in the prior experience that they weren't going to be able to get out of. And I can't possibly know. I can't possibly know that they wouldn't have got out of it. Like that's not for me to know.
Yeah.
but I do see how this jump started something new.
Yeah.
And that was important to me for whatever reason it was important to me.
Yeah. And just bringing it back to judgment and kind of applying it to what you're sharing now, I think sometimes our judgment will tell us, you know, you didn't know what kind of impact this would have, the breakdown of these patterns and whatnot, and it feels uncomfortable, right? We judge the anger that it brings up as being this is bad because it's anger, and anger's on this side of the emotional scale, where joy's on this side of the emotional scale, and it's literally just a feeling.
Mhm.
It's the weather just weathers.
The weather just weathers. Yes.
It's not good, it's not bad. The feelings just feel. And so if it brings this up in people, if we have the judgment on this is what I've created because I said this thing and it had anger that was filtered into it. So then, they're receiving it as anger and it's going to cause this kind of chaotic blow up or whatever. It's like we create an entire story around that. Right? It could mean something about your voice. If I say things, it just blows everything up, so I should just stay quiet. Or my words always cause everyone else to get angry, or everyone thinks they're being attacked by me, or I'm always attacked for sharing my voice. Like the multitude of stories that we can create from one experience and how everybody reacts to us. And it's just like the feelings are just feeling. We don't need to judge them as good or bad. They just are. Allow them to just be and to get curious. Okay, what else is this bringing up? Because it's
Yeah.
all just expression of self, which is
Yeah.
expression of God witnessing itself through you, through your eyes.
Totally. And I'm totally bringing in human design in this moment too, because I've seen in your experience, like when I've reached out to you, I've seen in understanding that we share a similar aspect in our design where we're here to annihilate things, and that's true and real and what actually drives us to our higher purpose. That to me was an annihilating moment.
Yeah.
Like I annihilated something and I needed to do that. And I couldn't see it until after that I didn't know until after that I was actually the one that did the annihilating. But in learning that, I was like, oh, somehow that's satisfying. And I don't really understand why. Like, why would it be okay for me to create an annihilating moment for somebody else? Like, in realizing that that is something that's possible and good, and it doesn't have to be much like my purpose in life is confrontation. I'm here to be a confrontational being.
Yeah.
And when I learned that, I was like, oh God, that sucks. Like
Yeah.
confrontation, my life has been absolute dog shit. So like I don't want to be this being. But actually, when I learned that, I was like, okay, I need to embrace this. What does this mean? Like
Yeah.
there was just this immediate acceptance, and I was like, whoa, I did not expect myself to do that. Like there's just been all these really interesting juxtapositions of what I judged something to be, and
Even
then
just in
how
the word itself,
right? Like,
confrontation, that's bad.
right. Like
Annihilation, bad.
right. It's destruction, but destruction is required because if you build something and it no longer serves a purpose, something new needs to be made space for. So, like, what is that? I don't know. I don't know what I'm here to annihilate. I'm just here to live as myself, and annihilation will naturally happen.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because in the moments when it's happening, I'm like, oh, this is what's going on right now. I'm just here to witness this. Like, I had no idea this was going to happen from this experience. And I find it so fun to be in that. And then to also realize, like, oh, we have a human bias towards these words because we have bad experiences. Oh, there can be really good experiences of confrontation. Like, I've had these moments where I become that annihilating being, or like anger comes up or some emotion arises, and all of a sudden in creating that moment, which is confronting a thing, it's here to remove something. I've created this space. I feel this emotional space open up for the work to happen. And it doesn't happen when I think about it. It just happens when I do the thing naturally. There is no um if I try to create that space intentionally in a moment when it's not supposed to be there, that too is convoluted.
Yeah.
Just because it's part of my being doesn't mean I always know when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And So we've stepped into a new territory, but I want to get back to the judgment. So the judgment of the words, the judgment of the idea of how we behave and how we're supposed to be in a moment, just because in the whole of society it may be uncomfortable or it may be perceived as wrong. There's actually something really beneficial about being that way because it's happening.
Yes.
And there is a contrived way and there's a non-contrived way. And there's a feeling that comes from both of those experiences that when we become aware to, oh, hey, this is actually a thing that could be good, if we can watch it, we can then see the spectrum of, hey, this is when it's convoluted, this is when it's natural. I might be somewhere in between because it's a spectrum. It's not like this is
Yeah.
the way and this isn't the way. It's how it shows up. Are we forcing it to happen or are we living it naturally?
Yes. I mean, as you're sharing that, I'm seeing like the image of an egg, right? And an egg
Mm.
cracked by force on the outside means the end of life. And an egg cracked by the natural progression of a baby chicken kind of pecking its way out of the egg means there's new life, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And so they're both annihilation of the egg, though,
Yes.
you know, the
Yeah.
structure that's around it. So,
Yeah. Different outcomes.
yeah,
Very much so. Yeah. And it's really interesting to see how timing plays because that's a timing thing.
yeah.
It's well, yes, I will say it's a timing thing because if somebody's cracking the egg wanting the baby chick to come out, that's impatience. Wanting life to start in a specific way at a specific time, thinking they can choose when that can happen. No, it's got to happen on its own. So that's been a really hard lesson for me to learn because that's what I was doing in the past when I was talking about that forceful experience of seeing the outcome. I know there is a positive outcome or like the best positive outcome that can come from whatever scenario. And it's the outcome that needs to happen beyond my own expectations.
Yeah.
So in and this is coming back to the emotional experience. So in the emotional experience and hanging on to the emotion and not being able to move forward into something new, not being able to digest it, we live in that moment so much longer than if we're willing to step into the feeling of it
Yes.
and actually move through it in whatever way needs to come up, as again, as scary as it may be, as unknown as the outcome may be. Um, because I actually got to see this in a dream, related to the situation I was talking about, where that whole experience, that entire experience that I had, um, with them was the fastest, most compassionate way for us to move through whatever it is we needed to experience altogether.
Mm, yeah.
And that was a revelation because I I just thought, I'll never have a relationship with these people again. Like it was really tough. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what was possible. I knew if I kept forcing it, it wasn't going to happen. So I just kind of stepped back and let it be. And then the universe intervened and things happened. And I mean, I don't have a relationship with all of them, but I have a relationship with some of them. And it's not the way it was before, but it's something that is growing anew. So,
Hmm.
like, we went through this experience, it's over. Now there's something new that needs to occur. And I know there's perhaps a bit of frustration in the awkwardness of the now because, we knew each other so well in the past, and now we're just totally different people. We're the same, but we're just totally different people having a completely different life experience because so much time has passed.
Yeah.
And um, knowing that I had expectations of who I was and how they be, I don't want to put them in that box. So I want it to unfold. And it's just created this open kind of playing ground again, where I can consciously say, I don't want to put expectations on this person. But at the same time, I need to move slowly so that they also don't put expectations on me. Because if I
Mm,
feel those are there, I'm just going to shut down and not be able to be the truest expression of myself with them. And if that's hard for us to have at the beginning, that's okay
yeah,
because we need to grow differently in because we're these people now. And there's different ways we are, there's different ways we think, there's different experiences that we have. And I don't want it to become the same as it was before because if we
yeah.
just fall into old patterns, we're just going to do the same stupid shit again. And that's not loving.
Yeah.
Like we were not being loving before. That was not. mm, I'm taking those words back. It was loving then in a dangerous way, not necessarily um, expressing love towards each other, but it was loving in that we were able to have an experience that brought us to this state.
Yes, yes. Well, and that's
So,
how it's like the energy of God, the love of God, the divineness of everything that is, it's all this flow of love, right? But sometimes it shows up as these distortions of love or as the most loving thing I can do right now is tell you to fuck off, you know? And
yeah,
sometimes that's needed, and sometimes that's a part of that kind of divine plan, so that things can start to shift and uh, essentially fall apart and come back together in a more solid kind of way. And that's a hard part to grasp about all of it. Because when I used to think of like everything's a part of the divine plan, I was like, so everything should be perfect. Everything should look this way all the time, and everyone should just get along, and everyone should just love each other. And sometimes it's like that's not necessarily how that looks. It's sometimes the most loving thing is to have that bit of conflict or that little bit of friction so that you can kind of grow apart and come back together with a new part of who you are, as you were just describing in this relationship.
yeah, yeah. The it's when you were talking about the breaking apart and coming back together, I got to see the a puzzle. And we're just doing the same puzzle over and over again. We're just recreating the same picture.
Yeah.
But if we let the puzzle break apart, and then I don't even know what the analogy would be for it to become something new. I can't even perceive what that
A
is.
puzzle that changes
Um,
itself every time you take it apart.
right. Yeah. But maybe it can come together in a different way to create a brand new picture. Like it can be this piece of 3D art as
Yeah.
opposed to a 2D flat picture
Yeah.
that can give us a completely different perspective of how we can be or who we can be or what we are together or whatever the perspective is that's required. Because it's not always in relationships. Sometimes it's about ourselves too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's kind of bringing me to so John, he works at a movie projector place. Well, they make projectors for businesses and stuff. And the other day he brought home a lens from work that they were going to be throwing apart, but he's currently in the compassion key course, so he's learning about like projection and lenses and all that
Yes.
sort of stuff. And his brain is going like he works with projectors, he works with lenses, and now he's learning about this on a spiritual kind of aspect of things. So he brings this lens home. He's really excited about it in his geeky kind of way. And he starts pulling this lens apart to see how many lenses are inside of it. And it's got like 9 lenses inside of it or whatever.
Okay.
And as he's showing me these different lenses, there are some that if he holds up, I can see a small version of him, but also like his head around it, but like his entire head's inside of the lens, right? And I was like, oh, it's
Wow.
kind of like the ego self and then like the higher self or whatever. And then we started talking about like the repurposing of this lens because he was like, it was set to be garbage. So, I've kind of given it another life. And it was like, it fulfilled its purpose as a lens within the facility of what it was supposed to do for that period of time. But now you're repurposing it and repurposing it in a way that it didn't even think it was possible, right? Like if the
Right.
lens had a consciousness, would it, sit there and go, I didn't get to fulfill my life as a projector, but now these people have witnessed me and they've witnessed this part about me, about my lenses and how my lenses can show these different realities and stuff. So now I've got this new purpose. And as you're talking about like repurposing these relationships or puzzles or whatever, it's like, what a gift to be able to go, the purpose of this was this. Let's restructure. and see what other purpose can actually come out of this now. Because if our souls are up there dancing with each other before we incarnate here. And I say to your soul, I really want to be able to have these high level conversations with you while we're down on earth. And you go, okay, Catherine, I'll do that. And we sign a contract and we come down here. But if we had met when I was like 16, our high level soul conversations might have been more of like, what a bitch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But because
I,
of,
yeah, I would actually be really curious about that. I do recognize like some of the people who are in my life now, when they talk about their past, I sit there and I go, I don't know if we would have been friends. Like I
right?
don't know if I would have had uh, a perspective of you that would have allowed me to participate in life together. Like I don't know because I did not do those things. I did not live life that way. I had very strong and strict beliefs that kept me in a certain behavior, and that behavior and that belief system is what taught me. It served its purpose. I mean, it's still there in some ways, but I see how limited it was because I didn't really get to know people on that human level. It was like I had this, like you say, like I was able to see their potential. I had this amazing projection. And when it came to actually experiencing the person, it was like I just kept them in the projection. I didn't necessarily say, "Oh, I'm okay getting to know you fully deeply." I judged everyone's mistakes, everyone's. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do when we're younger. I don't know. Maybe it was what I was supposed to do when I was
No,
younger.
I feel like most of us do, knowing that because I'm witnessing my kids go through this. They're all, in their early 20s or whatever, and going down to 12. And the amount of judgment that naturally comes out of them. And there's things where I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to judge them on that? Like, I didn't raise you to be this way. And they've got these really strong opinions and these really strong ideas where it's like, okay, was I like that? Oh, right, I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? I think we all go through it, and it's that kind of self-righteous um, independence as we move into adulthood, where we're really feeding our own egos of how well we're getting our lives together and how well we're living our lives. And look at all these other people, you know, that are doing these things that aren't necessarily living their lives, but they are. And it really took me marrying into John's family because my family growing up was very judgmental, was very like, these people you can talk to, these people you don't. These people are acceptable, these people are not. If they've made certain mistakes, we just cut them off. Like annihilation, that was the family rule. Um, Whereas John's family, when I stepped into that, they would have people come around that, would have convictions, or they were alcoholics, or they were, drug users and whatnot. And I'm going, like, holy triggers of like walls up, like these people are not safe, whatever. And it was actually John's dad who was like, they're still a human. They still need to be loved. So if not me, then who? And I'm like, wow. Okay, that's a brand new example of this that I was never given before, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm. Wow. Yeah, no, I can't say I was given that experience either. The judgment I experienced wasn't necessarily saying we don't associate with these people. It was more moralistic. So it was more like um from I mean, just to make this perhaps an easier analogy, literally from God's point of view. Like, are they a good person or a bad person? And what is good, what is bad? Like from a really high pedestal. And I had this, I wonder, I may have shared this before. I wonder if in conversation with you. Um, I have an aunt who stuck with religion quite strongly well, she's still alive, but throughout her entire life. So she's very much in it. And there's been moments where I witness how judgmental she can be. And I'm not really sure what brought me to this understanding, but in realizing that who's actually the judge? Like if we're following this God perspective, like if God is in part in all of this, who's actually the judge here? Like, are we stepping into the role of God and judging people based on what we think God would do to them? Like, from
Yeah.
our limited perspective, like, we don't know what God is necessarily going to do. God may know their heart. We don't know their heart. We get this external experience of them. They can't even communicate everything to us. I can't communicate everything within me to the outside world. I could try,
Yeah.
and every single person is going to receive it differently. So there's no way that I can properly judge a human, another human, from the perspective of God. There is no way.
Well, and I take it one step further where it's like, so if God is the creator of all, that means he created all, everything, which is the alcoholic. It's the addicted, it's the homeless, it's the thief, it's the murderer. He created all of it as a reflection of himself or itself or whatever you want to use it, which means it's all God.
Having a belief being challenged right now. So I go through how do I say this? In learning about a structure of how to think about the world. So um the way I think right now is that there's a multitude of dimensions and we're living in the third dimension, which I mean, I feel like that's an accepted fact at this point. Whether we're switching to 5D or not is not in my, that's not what I'm thinking about. But living in this third dimension is about having a very specific experience where we're here to live, and again, coming back to the emotionality of things, we're here to live an experience, an emotional experience that isn't necessarily possible in the higher dimensions because, how do I say this? My understanding of what I'm simply I've adopted this framework from what I've read and I'm testing it against my experience. So that's, I'm not saying this is necessarily true.
Yep.
It's me saying, I'm going to take this on and see if it fits. So, in what you're describing, I think if I've got this, I'm not sure if I've misunderstood this, but in that same belief structure, it's that God creates everything, or like the universe is the creator of everything, but not everything is meant to come to resolution, perhaps the way that we expect.
Yeah.
I'm not even
It's,
sure if
so
I'm not
to
sure. Yeah.
me, I feel like I should perhaps clarify on this a little bit more because I don't believe it's, say, God working through someone if someone, is consciously choosing to kill another being. Okay? Like premeditate, blah, 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 blah. However, the person, prior to whatever distortions that happened for them that created the idea that to take another life is the best choice they have, they are God. Right? There is an innocence within every single one of us. We're all born with a pure heart. And then life happens and it starts to distort us or it distorts our idea of how life works, how God works, what our connection is to God. That separation from God is a big pain point for a lot of people. And if you've gone through a lot of experiences of abuse and abandonment and traumas and whatnot, you can become more separated from that kind of God essence that essentially would just allow you to just be loving towards people. Right. And so if I look at someone who's, say, a murderer, and I go, they need to be judged and they need to be killed and they need to, I'm not actually seeing what is the innocence behind this. What was the pureness that was there before all of this pain got here to make this the best choice that they could make?
Right. Right. Because they're making that choice because they feel it's the best choice.
And not any, typical normal human being that I'm aware of in my experience is actually born into this life going, I just want to take other people's lives and I want to abuse people and I want to be powerful and greedy and da da da. That comes over a series of times where things have been taken from them, or there's been a lot of disconnection or a lot of heartbreak that's happened, where then it becomes, well, it's going to be an eye for an eye. I'm going to
And
take back what's rightfully mine.
in the choice that they're making, it actually doesn't mean they don't contain love either, because they could see it as a loving act for whatever other reason.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that they don't have the capacity to love others. Like in some cases, it does seem that way, but not always. So that's the thing. Like we never really know what's fully inside somebody. And I guess I really like what you say about going back to the innocence of the person. Because in, again, talking about the scenario that I've been mentioning this whole time, I harbored so much anger and sadness and grief and all the emotions towards the people that I had those interactions with. And it took receiving a healing from somebody else to and an unexpected this was an unexpected result. I asked about something entirely different.
Yeah.
And the thing that came about allowed me a healing that very day. Like it was instantly, and then I went downstairs, I meditated. I'm pretty sure I had a Kundalini rising or what awakening. And in that meditation, I saw my energy, my own energy go forehead to forehead with another one of those another one of the people in that scenario. And since that day, I have not been able to speak ill of them, when before that day, I could have spoke ill of them so easily.
Mm.
So it's not like I was always in this state where I can speak lovingly towards the situation. Like I lived in the emotionality of it for so long. And I was so ready to let go. I'm like, this is keeping me in a state of being that is so unhealthy. And it's affecting my relationship. It's affecting like how I perceive the world. Like there's so much about where I'm staying that I'm hoping to digest with them, perhaps. It's not happening. So I gotta do it for myself.
Yes.
And like I said, like I had no idea that that was going to happen because I asked about something entirely different, but it was such a gift.
Yeah.
And since then, because of that, I've been able to be so much more objective about my interactions with anybody from that scenario.
Amazing.
So it's yeah. And to the reason I'm bringing this up is because in that state of, having experienced so much trauma, so much abuse, or so much of whatever is bringing this person down into this difficult state where they can't see anything, they can't see any better way out.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. I understand that it's not always possible to step into that, but if there's an awareness that, hey, like I'm thinking of doing this thing. How is there no other way? Like being able to ask that question, like, how is there no other way? Why is this the way that I am choosing? Is there no other way? Is there another way? Can I be shown another way? Can I have some help to see another way? And I feel like that's something that when we're so stuck in those deep emotions, um, and like I also don't want to minimize if there isn't another way. Like maybe there isn't another way. I don't know.
Yeah.
But um if only it was easier in those states to reflect. But again, like that's the soul's journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it would be so much easier if in those really dense emotions, if clarity came through. But it it doesn't
Right.
seem to happen that way, or it hasn't happened in my experience where, and I guess what I should kind of shift there is when I was feeling really dense emotions as a young person and as an adult even, um, without being curious about those emotions and being in resistance of those emotions, kind of holding that strong reality of this should not be happening right now, that's when I could not see clearer. And that's when those emotions, I would allow them to essentially take over and become the narrator of how I was experiencing it, which then shut the doors or the windows to all other possibilities that were available to me. And I would say
Yeah.
things like, well, no, I can't do that because of, or I already tried that once. And I hear it from people a lot now where they're like, well, I tried meditating and it doesn't work. Well, how many days did you meditate? Two. Okay. Yep. It
Right.
usually doesn't work within 2 days. I also
Hmm.
couldn't get it to work within 2 days. Um, but I think a lot of times we really want that quick fix to get us out of that kind of state. And it's not necessarily a quick fix, other than just allowing yourself to experience it. That's the quickest fix.
Yeah.
But I know when people are first starting out and really just experiencing these emotions and stuff, it doesn't feel very comfortable to just be in it and to not recognize that the emotion is not you.
Well, it's funny because it's like considering like it's like a health issue. It's an emotional health issue. How many years did it take to build that emotional health issue?
Yeah.
And how much time? Like, of course, it doesn't take the same amount of time to heal the emotional health issue, but it's it's wild to think that there is a Band-Aid fix. And the thing is, I don't think that expectation is necessarily incorrect if it were literally the thing that happened in that moment that can be resolved the next moment.
Yes.
But it's not. It's been there for so long. And there's so many different layers to it because there's been so many life experiences that have that thread that they
Yeah.
need to be unpacked. And there's so many different things to look at. I mean, even the realization that it's not just this one emotion that needs to live out every single time. There's so many more pieces of you. There's so many more colors that need to have their expression in these moments, but they're not able to because of the pattern that keeps getting replayed. So at the same time, like people who want the Band-Aid solution, if you can get to a state where that's all you need, great. But it takes time to get there because of all the other things to unpack. It's like needing a Band-Aid when you need open heart surgery,
Yeah. That's exactly
right?
how I see it. It's like a big wound, and we're putting the tiniest little band-aid on it and going, are you going to stop bleeding now? And it's like, no,
Right.
the wound is huge. It's
That right.
huge.
That's not even where the wound is. Like, there's
Yeah.
all these other places where it exists. There's all these other things that are feeding the hurt and the pain and making it.
Yes. And that was a huge realization that came forward for me in about 2020, where I had spent most of my life, or most of my healing journey, really focusing on the abandonment that I felt when my dad passed away. Right. So it's like I'm constantly healing this abandonment piece and going like, why am I still crying about this? Like, got to get past this and doing everything I could. And it wasn't until 2020 that I started to actually recognize that my dad's passing, it was pretty solid. Like we knew he was passing, we got our time with him and whatnot. But the other aspects that were all happening at the same time, my mom went into a complete depression. Her and I completely butted heads, and we separated ways, and our grief really pulled us apart. So it wasn't just my dad's passing, it was the removal of my mom as well. In the removal of my mom, I lost a relationship with my sisters. I wasn't living at home anymore. So it's like there's all these kind of blind spots that I was holding on to that I wasn't looking at because I was going, no, it was his death. It was his death. It was his death. And it was like, no, there's a whole other reality that happened here that you haven't even allowed yourself to look at. And that's actually where I ended up finding the biggest frozen parts of my traumatic experiences was in the kind of aftermath of his death and everything else that kind of played out from it. And I call those the blind spots because it was like, this is the big thing, but what else kind of trickled out because of the big thing, you know?
Yeah, and it's remarkable to me because what I'm hearing in your description is you're recognizing the timing of when things changed. And and yeah, you are just looking at the biggest thing, thinking that that's the only thing that perhaps happened in that time because it was the loudest.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because the removal of something is quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting. I know recently I got to see differently. I feel like it's a similar thing, but it's different in that it was something that's just been there my whole life. And it literally, like the way you talk about blind spot, it was like I had no idea. And I knew, like I've seen it in others where, and I've seen it in myself in a different way where I had no idea that this was the thing flavoring my life.
Mm,
But I had no idea this thing showing up was flavoring my entire life and how deeply it was impacting me. Like this was 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I don't know. It was within, I'm going to say, the past 6 months where it started revealing itself. And I had no idea that I was operating from this program.
mm,
And when it showed up, like it literally came from behind. And I was like, oh my God, this is way bigger than I thought. This is why I had all of these experiences in my life. And these experiences that I had in the past, I was like, I have no idea. Like, why is this theme showing up in my life? Like, I don't even know where this is coming from. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand how this mechanic exists in my life. And that would have been like, I don't know, 12, 15 years prior. I have no idea. So there was a pretty specific moment in my life where there was a number of things happening that were all very similar in theme. And I was like, I'm the common factor here. So like why is this present? I don't know. But in that moment, I got to see that I could independently behave. So I didn't necessarily have to follow the stories of others. Oh, Jesus. Give me a second. Oh, the lightning bolt is strong. And I'm seeing, so I now in this very moment, I'm seeing how we have no idea how deeply the stories of our lineage impact us.
Yes.
We have no idea. And I know, so I've been studying deeply one side of my lineage. I don't know as much about the other side. And like like I see the behavior patterns in the people still living, but I don't understand necessarily why they all exist. I feel like there's specific moments, whether they're individual to each person, carrying the same flavor, or whether there was one big incident that impacted everybody that gave the flavor. Um, but I'm now way more curious of these stories because of seeing this in this moment. I'm sorry, I'm kind of lost.
No, that's okay. I seen the
That
lightning bolt
direction, and
come in where it's like boom.
I know it's not the time to like run down that path, but it makes me want to go down that path even more.
Yeah.
Um, because there's so much, like I've seen interactions in that side of the family where two people are interacting in a very hurt way, and I'm being shown this actually through somebody who showed me both sides of the conversation, and I'm like, whoa, like you guys are feeling the exact same pain
Mm,
and you have no idea. You have
yeah.
no idea that this person is hurt the same way you are.
Yeah.
And all I can say is, I'm sorry, like I'm not participating in this, but I can see, here's what I see. So do with that what you will.
Yeah.
And there's other experiences where I've I've come across pictures where I had no idea I was looking at the same person and they were just years apart.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Like I asked who this was, and I was told who it was, and there was a picture of who I saw them as now right beside them. Like that's the version of them I know. So what happened?
Mm,
Like uh um that's like a complete identity change in some way. Like
yeah.
the visual exterior experience of that person is entirely different to me.
Mm,
So, and I don't feel like that's all I'm looking at because I when I look at pictures of people, it's like there's an essence within them that I remember.
yeah.
And that's what was so shocking. Like I didn't see the same essence in the
Yeah.
visual.
And from your perspective, was the essence shifted in like a higher vibration, or was the essence almost like taken away?
It was lower. It was taken
Yeah.
away
Okay.
earlier. Yeah.
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 Okay.
And that's why I'm like, what happened?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I mean, I know there's traumatic experience there. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. It
And
will be interesting for you to just get curious about that and see what kind of wisdom is wanting to be expressed just through that awareness that's coming through right now, you
hmm
know? Because to
yeah.
me, I've been very blessed in the sense that on my dad's side of the family, there's a lot of writers, and they've written stories about the family. And so I know my great grandmother's experience, and I can see the patterns that have been passed down all the way through to my experience now. And it's
Wow.
like, what a gift you guys left me, especially because I love looking at ancestral stuff and looking at the patterns and looking at how everything starts to show up. And then my mom's side, it's not so apparent for me to be able to go, oh, this is everything that happened. But I still have my grandmother alive on that side, and I still have aunts and uncles that are alive on that side, so they can really answer a lot of my questions that I have. But with my dad's side specifically, like his mom's her lineage goes back even further. I've got the name of a relative from 1437 in
What?
Switzerland.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
Yes, because they're Mennonite, so they really have kept track of a lot of stuff. Um, and so I understand like when my grandmother's great grandfather, when he got on a ship to leave Germany to come to Canada and whatnot, I understand that whole story, which is such a gift to be able to have that. And really a gift that I want to be able to pass on to the future generations that come to our family to go, this is the healing work we've been doing, guys. These are the patterns that were in the past. This is what we've been healing on. And, hopefully down the line at some point to have them all free of whatever generational traumas and imprints and stories that the family has been carrying. Because I think ultimately we probably all come down to the same stuff despite whatever family lineage we're in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's just like different what's got different volumes or like it just happens in different organizations. I would
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Because it's so interesting to me how universal the compassion key themes are and how differently the themes come to people. So, and at the same time, in addressing, despite the differences, in addressing those common themes, how much of an impact it has on the people present in the co-created space.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I absolutely love that.
Right.
And there's a different, everybody's going to have a different, perhaps picture or meaning or whatever. And it's really, it's really up to that person how they're going to move through. Whether it's like I feel at this point it's complete acceptance for me. It's like whatever statement is going to be given to me, there's something there. I have to say it. And I have a real trust in the exchange, whoever I'm exchanging with,
Yeah.
because they too have a different perspective on how that pattern occurred and their interpretation of that pattern in my presence whether I'm in a group or whether it's just one-on-one, is important to me in that moment. And I can also see how, in saying some of the words, how there can be resistance to, I don't agree with this idea, or this isn't what I need right now, or I don't want to, I don't, maybe there's even a subconscious, I don't want to accept that that pattern is real.
Mm, yeah.
And um, I can, again, I don't even know where I was going with that.
I
I
think you
swear
bring
to
up a really good point, though, about the parts of you that can show up that are in resistance to what the statements are or what the other person is picking up on that you might not be able to see, um, or that you haven't allowed to come into your awareness. And sometimes yeah, I don't want to even believe that this is true, right? And
Right.
when we say those ones, I find especially the ones that I really don't want to say are often the ones that are the most impactful for me. And that's when I'm like, oh, my ego just about got the best of me there, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's so afraid of the change. It's so afraid of letting go of that story because then whatever is keeping it in that story, it can no longer exist. There's like a window opened or a door
Yeah.
opened into something new that's possible. And I mean, I've witnessed it in groups too, like the stuckness in a story, like it's this way, it keeps being this way. Why doesn't it change? Well, what is it that is keeping that story so present? Like why is a new perspective um so painful to accept? What is
Yeah.
it about accepting a new perspective that is keeping you in that position? And if and that's okay that that's the experience. What is important about remaining in that
Yeah.
perspective?
How is this story serving you? As much as you're in
Right.
contrast with it and going, I don't want this story anymore, there's a part of you that's going, this is my only story. This is all I want
Exactly.
to be true right now.
Exactly. So there's something really important about that experience, as painful as maybe it can be, that needs to be lived or needs to be felt or needs to be something,
Yeah.
needs to be acknowledged. Even perhaps like I wonder too, like because I was saying how before I didn't understand how upon reflection I can see my own experience and the role I was playing in that past experience, but I wasn't able to. Like there was a whole period of my life where I was like, I just don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, why is it that this is staying the same?
Yeah.
What is it that's keeping this the same? And I couldn't see what I was doing. And I still don't believe I can see all the things that I did. I don't believe I can because I recognize how in reaction to me, the person's reaction is still a little bit confusing. I still don't understand why we're not at a peaceful moment. I still don't understand what it is that maybe or how I showed up for them that they're not sharing with me. And maybe they don't want to. Maybe they're not ready, they don't feel okay, it's not safe. Like, I mean, I already recognize I created an unsafe environment in the past, so I can't force them to share that. And at the same time, like we're we're in different places in our life. Just because the same amount of time has passed doesn't mean that they're ready to completely let go. I had an experience that allowed me to completely let go.
Yeah.
I can't assume that they're going to have the same experience. I can't assume their path is going to be the same. I can't even assume they want that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like here I am in this moment of uncertainty, not knowing what my entire role was. So and after all the questions I've asked, like after all the exploration that I've done, I'm still not at the place of full clarity, and I don't know if I ever will be. So
Yeah.
to recognize that and then to see somebody else who's struggling and is unable to or unwilling or they're just not in a place where that's a thing that they can move through. Like I recognize how for myself it's painful to witness that in perhaps they're asking for help, they want change, but in everything that perhaps me as a person could possibly share, they can't see that. I'm just not the person to lead them through it this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. And my ego doesn't like that. Ew, no, it does not like that. But it's true. Like I'm just not the person.
Yeah. Well, and I always take those moments as just being like, I'm just planting a seed. Take it and do with it what you will. You can throw it to the wind. I don't care. It might catch down the road and grow roots and become something. It might not. Throw it in the garbage. It still might grow in the landfill. You know, it's
Right. It might land on your path, it may not. Maybe it'll be for somebody else.
yeah, yeah. Because sometimes I think we can give people the information that they need. Um, and I know I've gone through this where people have given me the information that I need. And it isn't until months later, sometimes years later, that I'm like, that's what they meant.
Right. Uh-huh.
This is what the teaching was, or this is what they meant by this. But I only sometimes I take like this little small part of it and I go, this is what it means. But it's like, no, there's a whole other aspect here that needs to be looked at. And I have to imagine it's the same for everybody, right? So as long as I can be humble enough to understand I've been there too, and remember those moments that I've been there, then I can witness that in other people without that kind of harshness. And I believe me, I still have parts of me that are like, well, you just get there already, like it's not rocket science, whatever. Um, but as you were talking about, um, the not being able to see these things clearly and stuff, it brings me to the song Amazing Grace, where it's like, I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. And
Mhm.
in those moments where you finally see, it's like everything, you see everything, right? You're like,
Mhm.
whoa, I understand it all now. And you forget it in a moment or two after that. But in that moment of that complete kind of realization, everything is so clear. And we judge ourselves for the times we can't see. We judge ourselves for the times we were lost. We judge other people for the times they can't see, the times that they're lost. But I think it's all a part of our evolution. At the end of the day, it's all a part of our evolution.
Totally, totally. Actually, I have a funny story about one of my math students. So every single math student who comes to me is showing me something about myself, whether it's where I'm at or where I was or whatever. There's always something for me to see, and it blows my mind every time because I'm in like I have maybe this moment of frustration or like why can't I get through to them or whatever, and it's literally that. It's like what is it that I need to see about this moment? And currently, one of my students is so they bring a pressure to succeed or pressure to complete that I have not experienced in anybody else. And in I don't know if I necessarily had this pressure on myself in the past, but I see how I behave similarly. So in in their final high school year, they've gone through the classes in a way where they're finally reaching material that doesn't sink in right away. It's a bigger idea, it's a bigger picture that needs to be drawn, and they're just I see this in a lot of students where they're just rushing to get to the answer. They want to figure out the process um, and be able to figure out how to do this to get that. And it's really funny because I'm like, I see this is happening and I'm trying to slow them down. And they're like, nope, I need to get to the answer. You're not giving it to me fast enough. So I'm going to go look at my teacher's answers. And I'm like, all right, sure. Like we just lost the entire point of the session, but whatever you want to do. And it's really interesting because the there's been moments in my life where I've taken the time to sit and marinate in whatever the idea is. And I perhaps in some way am still in the experience in a different way. It's not math related necessarily, it's more life related, where I want to get to a point of where the thing happens. And I want to figure out the process of how to do it. But there's so much value in marinating in the idea or what I don't even want to say that here. It's like being the chicken within the egg. There's so much value in that experience because there's so much that needs to align or that needs to
Mm.
show up before the thing can really be birthed properly. And the the thing that I'm witnessing in my student is that they're okay adopting other people's ideas in order to get to the result. Damn lightning. That's how I was. That was totally how I was. I was okay adopting other people's ideas. I've even mentioned it in this session where I took on the belief system of how perhaps the dimensions are structured. And but I'm playing with it for myself. It's not like I'm saying this is dogma, this is truth,
Yeah,
but I'm living within that and I'm saying I'm not sure if it is, but I'm going to pretend it is. So it's not necessarily truth yet. I'm going to pretend it is,
yeah,
and I'm going to receive ideas and see if they can fit universally. So can can this apply universally in a way that supports everybody's experience? Because it's not that things need to work this way all the time in that structured format. It's that here's a foundation or here's the mechanics of how things arise. And is it possible that that does fit everybody? And as I was saying earlier, like with the language, now that I'm starting to realize the bias of language, just because I'm thinking of it in a certain way, doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way things can arise because the language, the thought, the structure of the language is actually what's limiting my experience of seeing it.
yeah.
So, um, with this student, I know they're younger, they're like in high school, probably similar to your kids. I'm trying to explain to them like what's happening. And I know full well like they're not going to get the whole thing because they're stuck in the desire of a certain experience.
Yeah.
And I can only be like, hey, like, I can't give that to you. If you want that, fine. I'm the kind of person who can teach you to be in the moment and explore the ideas. And at the same time, like they're experiencing like the pressures of deadlines for universities, so they need the mark. So the pressure is to get the mark. So I said to them the other day, I was like, listen, maybe one day I'll get to tell you the story of how I didn't get to go to the university I wanted to go to. So I don't know if that's going to be a thing. I don't necessarily want, I never said this. I don't want it to be their reality necessarily, but if that is their reality, that's part of their soul's journey, then we can have that story. Oh man.
Oh, this has been absolutely amazing as always, Sarah. I always enjoy talking to you and uh, yeah, I feel like our soul expression back and forth just kind of expands and expands and expands. So thank you so much for joining me here today.
You're so
And
welcome.
for anybody who is interested in getting connected with Sarah, she is on Facebook at The Conscious Passenger. She also has a Facebook group called Conversations with the Universe, as well as The Peaceful Rebellion. And she's on Instagram at The Peaceful Rebellion, the period peaceful period rebellion. I'll get that into the comments for everybody. Thank
Amazing. I am more accessible on Facebook. I try Instagram, but it's hard.
I hear you. I feed my Instagram with my Facebook because that's what I know to do. But
Oh, that's smart, actually. Hmm.
yeah, well, it just means people that are on both are just getting hit with the same information twice. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
it
not the
works
way
out.
you're supposed to do it, but it's my reality right now. So
Totally.
all right. Thank you so much, Sarah, and enjoy your day, everyone.